Meeting buyers where they live. Missouri Soybeans member farmers, staff, and soybean exporters completed a successful marketing mission to Mexico and Panama in February. On this edition of the Spotlight podcast from Missouri soybean farmers and their checkoff, we'll talk about the importance of that mission and other missions to promote international soybean sales. I'm Tom Stever. Missouri Soybean Merchandising Council board member and Prairie Home, Missouri farmer Robert Elpers was one of the growers on a marketing mission to Mexico and Panama. Following that trip, Elpers talked about the mission's purpose.
Well, Tom, this was a very exciting trip. We took a couple exporters from Missouri with us and visited with present customers and potential customers while we were down there. The good thing, they're very receptive to Missouri and the quality of beans that we have, and they are excited to do more business with us.
So how do you go about building trust and long-term demand among Mexican and Panamanian customers so that strong markets can be ensured for Missouri soybean growers?
Well, and we preach this, but it's relationship. There's people you just like doing business with. And when the customers can put a face with that soybean, even though it's just a handful of families that are visiting them, we represent Missouri and who we are and what we have to produce. All of them appreciate it, just that one-on-one, and I think that's so important. And we have found that not only just with Latin American, but with the Asian customers and other customers all around the world. When they can either visit our farms or we can go over there and visit with them one-on-one, sit down with them, have a conversation, they can look us in the eye and say, okay, we trust you, we want your product.
Okay, I want to expand on that a little bit. You went down to talk to customers there, so you were sitting next to some very important clients. Robert, what do you tell them?
Well, I'll give you an example. The first place that we went, they are the largest soybean processor in North America. Now, that's not United States, that's not just Mexico, that is all of North America. They handle 320,000 bushels a day. And the remarkable thing, and they've got the statistics, they had everything out there for us, 29% of their soybeans come from the state of Missouri. And they're wanting to do more business with us. They're looking to do some IP with us. They're big in IP. They know what it means, identity preserved. In fact, when the buyer that came with us, or the exporter that went down with us, we've already got a message back that they're putting together, hopefully, several carloads of IP beans for them as we speak.
Just to be clear, this particular customer, this processor, is that in Mexico?
Yes, that was in Monterrey, Mexico.
Okay. And what do they do with those beans?
The soybean meal goes to livestock production down there, and the oil, and they've got a bottling plant right on site, and we was able to tour it, and they use the majority of the oil right for human consumption. Very little is done for biodiesel.
Who's your competitor in that case?
There are some smaller people down there, but our competitor, of course, is South America. But they realize what quality is. Our quality in the States, and in particular Missouri, we sell it as we got the highest quality beans in the Midwest, and we feel like we do. There is no competition to that because we are the best. But we also have to compete against the price of beans in Brazil. Hopefully, and they realize it because they told us over and over that we like your quality of your beans.
Are they currently a customer?
Yes. We have another one of our exporters from Missouri went with us, and they do business right now and have been doing business for several years.
Well, let's talk about the obvious transportation component in Panama, which is the Panama Canal. How important is that passage to U.S. and Missouri soybean growers?
Not quite as important as you might think, because from New Orleans, from our export port to straight to Panama, they don't have to go necessarily through it. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. The biggest problem is Panama depends on shipping and not rail because they just can't get it there by rail. But one of the cooperative, it was a big hog producer, and he happened to be sitting with me at lunch, and he said that we got to have somebody that we can trust. He said we made a deal, had a deal made with one of the large suppliers in the States, and he said had everything figured out, and then all of a sudden, just before it was shipped, price changed. And he said, we want to do business with you. We want to know when we're getting it, what we're getting, and the trust, again, comes right back.
What's your primary takeaway from the mission where the Panama Canal is concerned?
There is some issues there with the canal. Everyone that we talked to agreed there was concern. I think that's part of the negotiations that are going on now. I think that there's a lot of push and pull of who gets more control of it and the running of it. I think that it's going to get worked out fairly soon. I really do. And it's a vital part to world trade. So it has to stay open and run well.
Talk about the challenges of transportation simply in getting soybeans to that part of the world in Mexico and Panama.
Actually, Mexico is really not as big an issue as you might think because there are 2 or 3 rail lines that go directly from our location right here in western Missouri right straight down there. So that's why they've been doing a lot of business, and they can handle rail really well at these facilities. I believe they said they can handle up to 500 or 550 cars a day, and they like to do about 350. So they're used to working with us with rail, and it's absolutely no issue.
Okay, tell me about your takeaway from the mission, specifically from a customer building perspective. What was accomplished in that regard?
I think it goes back again to the trust and knowing that we have a quality product to send them. They're very open, very receptive. They're our neighbors. We want them as a customer. We need them as a customer. And I think that we helped solidify that with our trip.
You came away with a good feeling?
Very good. Probably the best of any of the missions that I've been on. This was not a very long mission, but we met the key people, and I think we made progress.
We always, and it hasn't been mentioned in this conversation, but always China comes up as a very significant U.S. soybean customer. Where do you put Mexico, Panama, that part of the world, as far as importance in a customer for U.S. soybean growers?
Well, as you know, in the past, we depended too much on one customer, China. And since the last several years, we have tried to diversify the markets. We have really stressed the Latin America market, and they have become a very, very significant part of our portfolio of exports of soybeans. So China's still big, don't get me wrong, and they're always going to be a big customer. Not as big as they were, say, 8 years ago or so, but they are a big customer. We need them, we want them, and we're hoping to expand that market some more in the near future. But we've got other customers around the world, and we're concentrating on growing that market also.
We happen to be recording this at your place during snowfall and at the outset of some very cold temperatures that are forecast. But it shouldn't be long. There's going to be thawing, and you're going to be in the field. What are you thinking about as far as the approach of spring planting?
Well, as of today, it's not any fun, the weather. It sounds like we got a pretty tough week ahead of us. But a farmer's always optimistic. We're always looking forward to that next crop. We're ready, and we've got machinery pretty well ready to go. And as soon as the weather breaks in the spring, we'll be out there. If the good Lord's willing, we'll put another crop in and hopefully have a great harvest.
What's your favorite part about this job that you do?
Oh, I think watching the emergence of a new crop, just watching it come up and grow, and then I enjoy looking at it and scouting it and just looking at the potential that it's amazing that little seed that we plant in April just a few months later makes a tremendous crop. And it's still boggling to the human what genetics and just the breeders and everyone has done to make agriculture as big as it is.
And between now and then, you're going to be calving as well. What are the challenges with that if we're at the tail end of cold weather or if there's still some ahead?
We're calving some heifers right now, and luckily we can lock most all of them up and get it done before we start calving our cows. Probably one of the biggest things is not so much the cold, but, when we start calving, it's in March, and that's when we get some cold, wet rains. And a lot of times that's a bigger issue than the cold weather. Those little calves have just struggle to get dry and get up and get going. So we spend a lot of time watching them and taking care of them, but that's just part of being a livestock farmer.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Panama, Mexico, and their importance as a customer. What is it that I left out that you'd like to add to this?
Again, these international trips are just so important. We've hosted several, I know at least 3 or 4 Latin American groups to our farm. We've had a group from Taiwan, a group from China, and whenever we go back, and I've been around long enough now that the people that we met down there have been to our farm. They remembered me, we shook hands and how have you been, So once again, it's that building that relationship that really, really, people think not anymore, that handshake isn't worth anything, but it really is. They want to put a face with that soybean.
Missouri Soybean Merchandising Council board member Robert Alpers of Prairie Home, Missouri. This edition of the Missouri Soybean Spotlight podcast is brought to you by Missouri soybean farmers and their checkoff. We're also on the air with the weekly Spotlight on Soybeans. Thank you for listening. I'm Tom Stever.